So let me share my screen. Okay, let me share my screen. Uh, Fine. So I'm starting again. So you see, while the topic is uh, challenges of river restoration, this presentation is not as much about river restoration, but it is more about the challenges that one might face when one uh, starts the process of restoring any river. And let me be very specific that this presentation is about Indian rivers, because Indian rivers, as we understand, are very unique, very different. Now, when we talk of restoration and restoration of anything, then first thing that comes before us is that has something gone wrong with it, and which needs to be set right. The second is thing is about uh, when when shall we know that the restoration has actually happened, which is that subject, and here we are talking of rivers. Has that subject restored to a state where we want it to be restored? And of course, uh, subject of restoration can be anything. In our case, it is a river. Now, there are broadly four challenges that one can face when we think of going about restoring anything for that matter. First is, what is this thing that we are trying to restore? In case of river, it is, what is the river? The second is, what has gone wrong with it? In case of river, what are the agents of sickness if the river has gone wrong, gone bad, or gone sick? And then, can we, because river is a huge entity, so can we identify the hot spots, so to say, or the location where we need to begin the work? And then the third is, which is important, is that which is that desired state of restoration. When shall we know that we have restored, we have reached that stage, and now our task is done. For a small object, say like a toy, we can know when the toy again starts working that it has been restored. But in case of a river, we will have to define uh, our goal very clearly, and so that we know where we are. And then the fourth thing, which is equally important, is how do we go about it? How do we go doing it? And this, for any restoration, is both. It's a skill, it's an art, and it's a science. Both are required if we really want to successfully do any restoration. Now, coming to the first challenge, which is what is a river? Let me share an anecdote here. In 2014, we had organized, along with five other different partners, a big event which is called as India River Week. And we had invited experts, river people from all over the country to that event. And when we shared the agenda for the day one, the item on the agenda was define a river, or what is the river. Now, people started laughing. They said, who doesn't know a river? आप क्या हमारा समय खराब कर रहे हो? we said, please have patience. Let us spend some time and see if we can really define a river. And so we divided the entire group into 4 different subgroups, and we asked them to come up with their results towards the evening. And then we found that people were really uh, discussing things and trying to there were arguments and whatnot. And by the evening, when all the 4 groups came back, you see, each came back with a different definition. And that shows how difficult it is to really understand a river or how complex a river system is. Now, this map, you people in Northeast very well know this. This is the river Brahmaputra. And this is the basin of river Brahmaputra. And these are 4 different pictures of the river Brahmaputra, right from its origin at Kailash, which is at the top of the left picture. And then this is the Great Band when the river enters into India. And then we have got this river in the hilly stretch in Arunachal. And then we have this picture, which is the river Brahmaputra in Guwahati. And then further, it moves into Bangladesh and then reaches the sea, where it becomes part of the Sundarban Delta. Now, while these 4 pictures are of what we call as the main stem of river Brahmaputra. But as we understand, this is not the only Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra is this entire big area which starts from Tibet and then enters Arunachal, where a few tributaries meet it. Then it enters the Assam plains and the valley, and then enters. And you can see all these different tributaries meeting it. So the true Brahmaputra is this entire whole. So it is, and as you can see, these are all interlinked. These are tributaries, and they are meeting the main stem at different places all along its length. And the river is different in different areas. In different sections, the river is different. In Tibet, the same Brahmaputra is very different. Its biodiversity is very different. Its water quality is very different. Its geology is very different. Similarly, when it enters Arunachal, it changes. When it enters Assam, it changes. When it enters Bangladesh, it is different. And then when it meets the Bay of Bengal, it is something very different. So a river is a aquatic system which is changing from place to place. And it, when it changes, it is not just the water quality it is changing, but everything about it is changing. So it's an extremely complex, interlinked whole. And that is how we must look at a river. तो जब हम ब्रह्मपुत्र की बात करते हैं और नॉर्मली हमारे दिमाग में main stem. Now, you see, this main stem term I will be repeating again and again because I want to differentiate between the main stem, just like a look, think of a tree, and tree has got a trunk, a bole, and then it has got the branches. So the branches are the tributaries, and the bole is the main stem. So the tree is not the bole, tree is the whole. Similarly, river is not just the main stem, river is the whole, and that is how we must view it. Now, second challenge is, how do we know that something has gone wrong? Now, for a system like river, there can be an umpteen number of indicators of sickness. Now, these are some of those indicators that I have mentioned that we have experienced when we have walked along the Yamuna in Delhi and downstream and upstream. And when these are the indicators that the local people actually shared. So there can be indicators which are technical indicators like the quality of the water or the presence absence of biodiversity or the availability of space, the floodplain and all that. But these are the indicators that the local people have shared about River Yamuna downstream of Delhi, where they have said, अरे इसमें तो पानी है ही नहीं. अगर थोड़ा सा पानी है भी तो it is stinky. I cannot irrigate my crops any longer. Water is no longer fit to drink. So now these people are comparing that stage of the river to a past stage where they knew that the river was in a much better health. And similarly, other things. Now, I want to share with you this again interesting incident that happened with us when we reached Vrindavan and we stayed in a ashram right next to the river. And there we were talking to the head priest, and he said, "You see, it is so unfortunate that every day I have to lie. मुझे झूठ बोलना पड़ रहा है हर दिन. क्यों? Because I am saying कि मैं अपने ठाकुर जी को यमुना नदी से नहला रहा हूँ. But the fact is, मेरे पास वो हिम्मत नहीं है कि इस नदी के पानी से अपने ठाकुर जी को नहलाऊं." So you see, these are the different indicators that we come across to know what has gone wrong. The final thing, the floods. You see, people said floods तो हमेशा आते थे. Floods come every year. They have been coming all the time. But now either the floods don't come, or when they come, they are devastating. So this is the stage, and this is one of the strongest indicator of a sick river. I will talk more about this little later. Now the predefined state, when we think that yes, we have reached that stage where our task is over. In case of Indian rivers, by and large, the decade of 1960s, 1960 का जो दशक है, उसमें जो हमारी नदियां थी, they were by and large, they were in good health. Their water could be taken straight from the river and consumed. They had good biodiversity. Their floodplains were secure, and so that can be a good reference period when we want to restore any of our rivers. And then the fourth challenge, which is how to diagnose. And then, of course, once we have diagnosed, then the remedy is in front of us, and it is for us to choose what to do about it. So, can we identify various hot spots in our river system where action has to be initiated on a priority basis? That is one. And the second is, what are those agents of sickness that have turned those sites into hot spots? So, because the rivers are right from, say, Brahmaputra, from the high mountains and the plateau of Tibet to the sea. So there are at different places there will be agents of sickness. So there may be landslide prone stretch on the main stem or on any tributary, so which is about the catchment health. So the catchment health is the indicator of whether our river at that place is sick or not. When we come little later downstream, we find that anywhere we find a dam or a barrage, that is a hot spot. Why it is a hot spot, I will explain a little later. And then the third thing which I'm drawing your attention to, which is the embankment. You see, this is one agent of sickness which a lot of us tend to ignore. And this is very unfortunate because this is a very important agent of sickness. And a lot of rivers uh, in Indo-Gangetic Plain, they have been embanked, or we also call them bunds or dikes, and the floodplain has shrunk as a result of the embankments. And then there may be cities or industrial estates sitting right on our river. And those cities, as source of sewage or industrial pollution, or again sand mining for the real estate in those cities, all those are hotspots as well as they have the agents of sickness there. And then importantly, we have since the 60s, we have this chemical agriculture happening left, right, and center. And this is, as we all know, is a high water consuming agriculture. And for that, it has to take water. Water has to be diverted from the river. Broad principles of river restoration. Now, this is not from any book, and this is from our own experience and our own understanding. We think that river restoration is, on paper, very simple. In practice, extremely difficult. Why it is so simple? Because only two things have to be done. River must flow free because that is its fundamental right. That is how a river exists. वो बहना नदी का धर्म है. And the second thing is the river must flood free. Now, a lot of people might think, what am I talking about? See, but let us look at flood. What is a flood? Flood is a climatic phenomenon. Just like you have a heat wave during summer, you have a cold wave during winter, you have a flood wave during monsoon. It's as simple as that. The parallels are there. Now, have we ever said that heat wave has become disastrous? Have we ever said that cold wave has become disastrous? Yes, people have problems with them. People even die, but they are never declared as disaster. But whenever there is a flood in our river, we say it is a disaster. And that is something which is very, very unfortunate. And that's a fact because flood in a river is essential for its health. Flood is really, really important for a healthy river. And third thing, a river is as healthy as its thickest tributary. So again, looking at the larger picture, just like when we talk in terms of a chain, and a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Similarly, a river, which is a networked, complex system, is as healthy as its thickest tributary. So when we want to restore a river, let us begin with the thickest tributary first. And if we look at all the tributaries and we turn all the sick tributaries into healthy, the main stem would automatically become healthy. And but if we continue to do what we are doing, that we stop them from free flow, we stop them from free flooding, they become devastated. And that's what we have been observing, at least for the last decade. Every year, you have these news from one part of the country or the other that the river has become devastated. Why is this so? You see, this all is because of our own faulty understanding. And this understanding we have received from our own education. So in a sense, our education about rivers has been faulty. And this has come down to us from the colonial time. But the fact is that India was, India is, and India shall always be a groundwater driven economy. So for us, our lifeline is the aquifer, it is the groundwater. But all these years since the independence, even before, our focus has been on developing surface water. And all this has been at the cost of our river's health. Obviously, it has been a big mistake because despite spending some 4 lakh crore, let me repeat, 4 lakh crore rupees on raising some 6,000 odd structures on our river. And I'm not including embankments in this cost. Where we are today, 70% of our irrigation is groundwater based. 80% of rural water and 50% of urban drinking water supply is groundwater based. 90% of our industrial water source is groundwater. तो अगर ये सब ग्राउंड वाटर है तो फिर सरफेस वाटर का के ऊपर अगर all that money we had invested in securing our groundwater resources, looking at mapping our aquifer systems, making them secure, we would have been in a much better stage where our rivers would have been healthy, we would have all this groundwater, and our economy would have been flourished. Alas. Now, what is the essential of a perennial river system in Indian climatic conditions? See, हमको तो पानी सिर्फ 3 महीने मिलता है, खूब पानी मिलता है. We get lots of water during the monsoon month, but after that there is hardly any water. So how are our rivers perennial? And if someone to say, oh, we have the glacier, let me tell you, the glacier contribution to Ganga system is just 2 to 3%. The rest is all from aquifers. And how does it happen? It happens during the monsoon period. Rivers feed the aquifers and saturate them, भर देते हैं उनको. And when the monsoon is over, it is the aquifers that in turn feed the rivers and provide them the base load and make them perennial. And this is a very Indian South Asian phenomenon, monsoonal phenomenon. So these two actions, what is called as influent action, where the river is feeding the aquifer, and the effluent action, where the aquifer is feeding the river. This was happening in our nation for donkey years now. This is how our healthy system existed. And everybody was happy with it. But what we have done over the last 70 odd years since the independence, that we have, as a result of our own misunderstanding, destroyed this system, this natural system. And we are left with hardly any true perennial river systems in the country. Subcontinent में तो hardly any river is truly perennial. And even in the monsoon season now, इतना पानी बह ही नहीं पाता नदियों में कि वो aquifers को पूरा भर दे. Because earlier what used to happen, there used to be waves of floods which used to come. But now, जो small floods हैं, वो तो हमारे dams और barrages के पीछे खड़े हैं. Those small waves तो आते ही नहीं. So they are unable to feed the aquifer. And when a flood, truly big flood comes, when dams and barrages are unable to hold that water, and then they release all that water all of a sudden into the river, it comes as a torrent. And then the river does not have time enough to feed the aquifer. वो तो पानी तेज आया, full of energy आया और चला गया. So the aquifer बेचारे वो तो प्यासे के प्यासे रह गए, even in the monsoon season. And in non-monsoon season, the base flow has drastically reduced. क्योंकि अब तो एसोसिएटेड एक्विफर्स जो हैं वो पहले तो इसलिए खाली हो गए कि मानसून में भी नहीं भरे जा रहे, और उसके ऊपर क्या हुआ है कि हमने लेफ्ट, राइट एंड सेंटर देयर इज सैंड एंड बोल्डर माइनिंग. देयर इज नो बेटर एक्विफर देन सैंड दैट वी आर रिमूविंग फ्रॉम आवर रिवर. देन जो कुछ भी एक्विफर में पानी बचा था, विच इज द ग्राउंड वाटर, उसको हम एक्सेसिव एक्सट्रैक्शन कर रहे हैं फ्रॉम द फ्लड प्लेन्स एंड ऑल दोज एरिया. तो वो भी फिर बेस फ्लो नहीं बन पाता है. एंड अगर कुछ बचा है तो फिर फ्लड प्लेन्स को हमने एम्बैंक कर दिया, एम्बैंक करने हमको उनको ट्रंकेट कर दिया, और फिर जो भी वेटलैंड थे फ्लड प्लेन के उनको हमने सब कन्वर्ट कर दिया. सो वी हैव in a very systematic and in a foolhardy manner, we are actually cutting the branch on which we are sitting. Now, finally, I will give you one Ganga as an example. It's a short presentation, not very long. I'm coming towards the end of my presentation, but I'm looking at Ganga because all of us revere this river. Ganga Ma hai, but what is it? It's the state. You see, this is the body of the Ganga. So, and somewhere there is the Ganga main stem. You can see all the different major tributaries, although there are thousands of tributaries of Ganga river, actually. So, in a sense, Chambal is as much Ganga. Damodar is as much Ganga. Ram Ganga is as much Ganga. Gandak is as much Ganga as the Ganga. So this is the body Ganga. And let us see how all these tributaries have become sick. So until unless those tributaries get better, their health improves. Namami Gange, National Mission for Clean Ganga, गंगा मेन स्टेम पर कुछ भी कर ले, कितने हजार करोड़ लगा दे, बट अंटिल अनलेस ये ट्रिब्यूटरीज की हेल्थ ठीक होगी, गंगा ठीक नहीं हो सकती है. कोई भी हम क्लेम कर ले, कितने भी हम इवेंट लग कर ले. Let me show you what has happened. What is the true state of Ganga today? These are all the Ganga tributaries, different Ganga tributaries, and Ganga at different stages. And this is the data of dwindling flows. जो फ्लो गायब हो गया है गंगा सिस्टम में से ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ 30 years. सिर्फ 30 साल की बात आई, 75 से लेके 2005 तक. And now, because this is 2005, we are in 2021, so things would have been much worse now. But the situation is that the flow reduction that Ganga as a system has experienced and its tributaries have experienced. Ganga, when it meets Yamuna at Allahabad, it has lost 50% of its flow. Similarly, Chambal, when it meets Yamuna at Bhare, it has lost 63%. हम सोचते हैं Chambal is a healthy river. Just look at here. Chambal is a clean river, but it is not a healthy river. It has already lost 63% of its flow by 2005. Look at Sindh. Sindh has lost. Sindh is a lower tributary, direct tributary of Yamuna, comes from Madhya Pradesh. It has lost 80% of its flow. Son, when it meets Ganga before Patna, it has already lost 58% of its flow. Then there are few black spots which are actually the rivers which are coming from Nepal. So उनकी स्थिति इतनी खराब नहीं है. But ultimately, Ganga, when it is meeting Ganga Sagar, meeting the Bay of Bengal at Ganga Sagar, it has already lost 60% of its water. So how can Ganga be called healthy? And now, why it has happened? कहाँ गया वो flow? There can be only two possible reasons. या तो बारिश कम हो गई है इस 30 साल में, या फिर वो पानी कहीं डाइवर्ट हो गया, कहीं खड़ा है, वो नदी में नहीं बह रहा है. We know for sure कि भाई बारिश कम जरूर हुई है, पर इतने ड्रास्टिकली कम नहीं हुई है कि 60% गंगा जो है वो गायब हो जाए गंगा सागर. So the only reason one can now make out is that there has been a drastic decrease or a drastic diversion of the flow, both in monsoon and non-monsoon season, in the entire basin. Let me show you. This is Ganga today. बिल्कुल रणथंगा जैसे इसकी बॉडी में there are at least 1000 cuts which are shown in red as if blood is oozing out. These are all the dams and barrages on river Ganga system. And ये जो साउथ में आप barrages देख रहे हैं, ये तो अब कोई भी नदी यहाँ बची नहीं है. नदियां जो थोड़ी बहुत बची हैं जहां बैराजेस एंड डैम्स बन सकते हैं वो उत्तराखंड में है, जहां हम लगे हैं 200, 250, 300 बांध बनाने के लिए. और ये जो एरिया है जो कि पूरा प्लेन एरिया है, फ्लड प्लेन है, एलुवियल प्लेन है, जहां डैम बन नहीं सकते, इसलिए वहां डैम नहीं दिख रहे हैं. पर ये सब के सब जो एरिया है, सब के सब जो ट्रिब्यूटरीज हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ देम हैव ऑलरेडी बीन बंडेड और दे हैव बीन एम्बैंक्ड. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि वो बची हुई है, उनको भी हमने नहीं छोड़ा है. So this is the stage of river Ganga today. Now I don't have to tell you where do we have to begin if we really want to restore river Ganga. And so no wonder the body Ganga is sick. And what is the stage of body Ganga today? Is already the state of almost every river in the country, or if not, because of course in Northeast there are still healthy rivers, but there are plans, and if those plans go forward, they will also become sick, just like Ganga. And the worst thing which can happen to our rivers is this so-called obsession of our people with the river linking, because there is no linking actually which is taking place. It is just dam, canal, dam, canal, dam, canal. 3,000 more dams planned. So this, if this ever happens, God forbid, it will make Indian rivers sick for all time. We can never restore them. And in turn, it will make sick the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful presentation. Now, I would like to make the session open for any brief question and answers from the audience.
Yeah, I can take questions. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. We would like to make the session open for brief question and answers. If anyone wants to have any
Uh,
questions, they can directly ask the speaker, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, you're audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Hello, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. It was very, very wonderful and eye-opening presentation and all. I'm Dr. Anup. I'm from Sikkim, actually. I'm friend of Kamal Tanti also. And regarding the rivers and its dams around the rivers, like in Sikkim also, this the river Tista, in the river Tista, lots of dams is coming up. So I just
yeah,
want to know that
I'm aware.
is it sustainable or the benefits the dam gives to the people more than the wrong things it brings up. Like I just
You see, let me say, I have spoken a lot about this in the presentation, but let me say, you see, even on principle, even if you get some benefit, but if that benefit is at the cost of something else, you should you should say no, I don't want this benefit. You see, the river Teesta is being killed by those dams. You want benefits after killing your lifeline? No, please. And those benefits, let me tell you, cannot be sustainable. They will not be sustained because soon enough there will be no water in those rivers. So कहाँ से वो benefit मिलेगा? So let Teesta flow free. Let Teesta flood free. And Teesta will give you all the benefits that you can think of.
absolutely, sir, absolutely. Then, sir, why why is
See,
still happening,
nowadays,
sir? Like the making of dams and all.
yes, you see, dam today is not made for any other purpose than to make money. Let me be very clear. Dams are made, they are part of the political economy of the country. They are made only to make money. They are not made because you see a dam takes 10 to 15 years. 10 तक 15 साल में हम रहेंगे नहीं रहेंगे, स्पीसी रहेगा नहीं रहेगा, कि who knows? We are at such a critical stage as a species, and still if we think of building a dam on a river, shame on us. Sorry.
Sir, Ravindranath sir wants to ask a question.
Yeah.
Sir, I really like your talk, and you have shown
Thank
that
you.
leakages on Ganga Basin, the red mark.
Yeah.
So the canal and the dam is the main culprit, and it is in the name of nation building.
Yeah.
So what is your suggestion that civil society can do in this given situation when things are done in the name of nation building? So that means the government itself is trying to kill the river. Lucky that we have alternative energy cheaper than dam. But for irrigation, canalling will continue. So in any case, they will divert the water. So I am quite
Okay.
confused that what a civil society group can go ahead with. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. You see, I mentioned that construction of new dams and new canals is not required because even today, our irrigation is based largely on groundwater. And that groundwater is secured by flowing rivers, by flowing streams. So we have to expose this myth. We have to expose this myth of irrigation happening through canals. It is not happening through canals. Even if a canal exists, it is either dry or the water does not come when you require it. And so everybody is forced to over extract groundwater. And this is happening left, right, and center, everywhere. So if groundwater is the lifeline, तो फिर कैनाल की क्या जरूरत है? और जब कैनाल की जरूरत नहीं है, तो फिर डैम की क्या जरूरत है? So we have to expose these lies. These are vested interest initiated lies. We don't need any more dams. Yes, there was a time when we needed dams for electricity. But today, with solar and wind and other sources becoming far easier, far cheaper, and far faster to erect, there is
Right.
no justification of raising any dam anywhere. We have to expose these lies, and that is the role of civil society.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, Mr. Snehankar Chakravarti has asked the question, what is the current status of river Brahmaputra, especially the river bed and the future of flood conditions of Assam?
You see, I'm sorry I can't answer this question because my area of study and research has been largely the river Yamuna and the Gangetic system. So, but this much I know that a large number of rivers in Northeast are still healthy because still we don't have too many dams on them. Still they are flowing free and flooding free. You see, the flood in Assam is not a new phenomenon. ये कोई नई बात नहीं है. And people in Assam have, for ages, they have known how to live with floods. And we had all those flood adapted systems with us. But what has happened is, over a period of time, या तो हमने उनको इग्नोर कर दिया, या फिर हम फ्लड प्लेन के अंदर इतना ज्यादा घुस गए कि अब जब भी फ्लड आता है तो हमको लगता है कि भाई मुसीबत आ गई, that devastation is happening. You see, the entire Assam is a product, is a construct of Brahmaputra floods. You are created by Brahmaputra. So how can floods be something which is unnecessary or which are undesirable? तो माँ है हमारी, आपकी आसाम की माँ है ब्रह्मपुत्रा, और ब्रह्मपुत्रा में फ्लड. But I'm sorry, I don't have much information about the Northeast River, so I'm unable to answer this question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sir, if the question answer session is over, then I would like to request our honorable guest, Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, for his final remarks.
Can I make one intervention, please? Can I make one intervention?
Yes,
Yeah,
Professor.
yes, sir. Sure,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. I just wanted to congratulate Manoj ji for his excellent presentation. And I heard him several times. So each time I hear him, I learn something new. So I really thank for this wonderful presentation. I just wanted to mention two things. One, when you talk about the different reaches of river in terms of analyzing and understanding the river health from head to tail, I think one of the important segments of the river, which is currently now very important, is the delta, the tail end of the river, which is actually completely ignored. So the delta is now in a very pathetic condition for all rivers in the country today, and all the deltas are subsiding. Deltas subsidence is taking place. Lots of seawater intrusion, coastal flooding, and I call them seawater invasion are taking place. So that, and it makes life very miserable for the farmers. That is one, and that's very important. And also and also that is also because of the lack of flow water and what you call the free flow, and also the lack of flood, since you dam all the water and there is no flow of water into the sea and through the delta, and that makes delta extremely vulnerable. That is one. And because there is no sediment flow, the lack of sediment flow into the delta and makes the elevation level of the delta very vulnerable, and so the delta subsidence is taking place. That is one, number one. Number two, I just wanted to also tell you, in one of the rivers in Tamil Nadu, after the construction of the dam, I'm just telling you the impact of construction of the dam. After the construction of the dam, you won't believe there were 606 springs originating from the river. They all got dried up. And earlier, people were irrigating these springs for their irrigation purposes. Today, those irrigation channels are completely dried, and there is no spring at all. And downstream, even the riverbed aquifer is dried up. And furthermore, the river sand mining have made the river extremely vulnerable, and river aquifer is completely depleted. So I thought I would just make this point, which is only to strengthens your argument, and your statement. It's really stunning that why do we need big dams when your economy, either for agriculture, drinking, or industry, depend entirely or majorly depending upon groundwater? Why do you need? What are you doing? How do you justify the existence of so many dams? On top of that, you want to link rivers. So it's completely unjustifiable.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You
sir.
really added very good value.
Thank you, sir. I would like to request our honorable guest, Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, for his final remarks.
Thank you so much. I'm truly speaking, I'm not just impressed, but also stunned with the kind of exposure that was made today by Manoj sir regarding the situation of rivers in our country. And as was rightly pointed out by him, Brahmaputra is a lucky area for most of the people who are residing nearby that river. But I'm sure people who are responsible for those areas which are influenced by Brahmaputra and which are influencing Brahmaputra would take lessons from Ganga and Yamuna and other rivers in our country. That's the only wish I have. Now today is the day, which is a very important day, World Rivers Day, and that is supposed to be causing to get traction, of this concept by giving a theme every year. And this year's theme is waterways in our communities. And interestingly enough, what they have said is that it is with a specific emphasis on the need to conserve and repair urban waterways, which are frequently under stress. Now, on the face of it, it may seem that what are we talking? Why do we just see the urban waterways improvement, etc., or repair of that? But when we see this statement against the background that was explained by Mishra sir so nicely and so clearly, we can understand that ultimately the effort has to start right from the origin and the place of origin of these rivers. So the idea is to increase public awareness about the values and services of rivers, which are numerous in fact, and which include irrigation, provision of drinking water, sustenance and support of aquatic, riparian, estuarine, and even land biodiversity, then energy that was talked about, and also transportation and recreation. And these will go on only if we have been able to conserve and maybe reinstate the rivers to their pristine situation that they were in. You see, very interestingly, the rivers, as a part of nature and environment, they have historically influenced the life of human beings. Right in the beginning, they must have provided a choice to settle at certain places. So you'll find that most of the big cities, they are along rivers. So they invited people, they invited the human beings to come and stay near them, the rivers. But with time, unfortunately, it has turned the table just in the opposite way. Whereas initially the rivers impacted to formalize the customs, practices, traditions, and life styles that sustained the lives and societies of human beings. Unfortunately, with the changing times and mindset of populations, which largely became exploitative and consumer-oriented, our practices and lifestyles have started impacting the same rivers and water bodies extremely adversely. So to come and stay with her, we have started harming them, harming the mother. And that was brought out very nicely by Manoj sir. And it was also very shocking to understand this fact that just 2 or 3% of Ganga is the contribution of glaciers. And therefore the need to improve the catchments of all the tributaries, that becomes so paramount and so important. But unfortunately, it's not being understood by the policymakers. And that was also brought out very well by Manoj sir. He gave us not just the theoretical knowledge, but also something which was from his experience. He has been a field, not just a field forester, but a field riverman also. And talking about perennial rivers problems and how this has changed over time. I mean, they're all coming from a very basic, fundamental, and field level experience that can come from an authority on rivers like Manoj sir. So the thing is that all this really calls for a change in our approach towards our rivers, which are sources of rejuvenating water courses everywhere, including the groundwater systems. So we have to reorient mankind in favor of principles of conservation, I think, and we have to adopt a new paradigm for treating the natural resources, including rivers. And I'd like to just inform my friends here that there is a very interesting thing that has started happening at the global level. The move is to provide rights to natural resources. And rights to natural resources are being given. Apart from that, there is something called spiritual ecology that is coming up. And that spiritual ecology tries to help people to find their own pathway towards a more sustainable, green, and peaceful future with the close understanding of natural resources. So very interestingly, the different governments have also realized, and even the courts are now realizing that nature has to be treated differently. We have had many rules, regulations, acts, and various kinds of instruments, statutory instruments, and that they have yielded what we can see today, and which is far from satisfactory. So various governments in the world and various courts, they are treating nature and its components as legal persons within statutory frameworks. So they have a kind of right that you and me, anybody as a citizen has. I'll give you some examples. In Bolivia and Ecuador, the rights of Mother Earth have been recognized as equal to human beings and citizens. 11 rights have been declared in Bolivia in favor of Mother Earth in 2016. And they include Earth's right to maintain the integrity of life systems in its womb, within it, to maintain the integrity of life systems. Then Earth's right to diversity of life on it. That is a right of Earth to be able to sustain a diversity. Further, Earth and its components' right of protection against contamination. This is a legal right, statutory right given to Mother Earth. The right of water to preserve its quality and composition to sustain life forms, life systems, and also against pollution. These are just a few. There are 11 rights that have been given to the Mother Earth. And you and me can go to the court, stand as a champion, as a lawyer, as an advocate of Mother Earth in the court of law. That is the situation in Bolivia and Ecuador. In New Zealand, in 2017, I come to the river. Wanganui River was declared as a legal person in 2017. And in Canada this year, 2021, the Magpie River has been declared as a legal person. So now the natural resources are coming up, are getting recognized as legal persons. And I come back to India, where in our own country, India, Ganga and Yamuna, these two rivers have been recognized as living entity and as juristic or legal person with all rights like a living person. This was done by the Uttarakhand High Court on 20th of March 2017. And the High Court appointed a loco parentis, they call it in legal terms, loco parentis, which is the human face to protect, conserve, and preserve the rights of Ganga and Yamuna. And the High Court declared that the Chief Secretary of Uttarakhand and the head of the Namami Gange, they will together become the loco parentis, take up the role of loco parentis. The government of India, the central government, went in appeal to the Supreme Court against this decision. They got a stay on this order on the ground that one person in Uttarakhand cannot become a loco parentis for Ganga, which is flowing into so many states. On this ground, there was a stay granted. But the basic fact, the basic presumption of Ganga and Yamuna being legal persons, the juristic persons, that has not been challenged and that has not been overruled. So this is a new area that is open to each one of us, including the civil society. So this is one aspect that I just wanted to share, but it was just fabulous hearing to Manoj sir. It was exceptionally powerful and impressive presentation, which brought before us a number of extremely critical elements that face our rivers and in fact the whole mankind. I'm sure with this webinar, we can and we shall, in whichever way it is possible, contribute towards conserving our rivers. Not just rivers, they are tributaries, the streams creating the tributaries, and ultimately the catchments that give life to the origins of these rivers. That is my take on this. And I congratulate Manoj sir, and I think I should congratulate each of the persons who attended this webinar, because this webinar has given a lot of new kind of understanding to us. And we are really truly benefited by this. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, sir, for his concluding remarks. And thank you, Honorable Mr. Manoj Kumar Mishra, sir, our esteemed speaker, for his awesome speech and presentation. I would also like to sincerely apologize to everyone for the technical glitch that happened today during the session, and that we have to rejoin everyone during the meeting via another link. On behalf of CCAP, we apologize to everyone. And I thank everyone personally for your graceful presence, cooperation during the technical glitch. And my heartfelt gratitude goes to our esteemed members of CCAP, Dr. Edmond Andrew, Dr. Kamal Kumar Tati, Mr. Snehankar Chakraborty, and for providing us the platform and support towards this talk and making this occasion possible. Thank you, Jha sir. Thank you, Mishra sir. Thank you everyone for being present here. So we can conclude and we can end this meeting right now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.